Previously on MJ Sailing, we attempted to make the first half of one of our daggerboard cases, although things didn't quite go according to plan. Because we had tried vacuum sealing our bag to the table, the pressure ended up cracking it, and we were left unsure if our mold was able to compress enough, and fairly positive we'd have to start the entire process over again from scratch. After 8 years of the nomadic life, involving crossing oceans in a 34-foot Sabre, refitting an aluminum boat, and then taking that to the Arctic Circle, we're back at it again with a brand new build. This is Matt, and I'm Jessica. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and join us every week as we start our newest project of building a 42-foot catamaran from the ground up.
Moment of truth. We had let this sit and cure overnight with, first we had both of our oil radiator heaters going, but just before bed Matt went and switched it to one. We just took off all the bubble wrap, and we're going to see what kind of mess we ended up with.
Yeah, so a lot of lessons learned. We'll just call this one test 2.
Yep, testing on a full scale.
Yep, oh, sucks. So much resin, so much cloth, and so much materials. On a big form like this, realize that it really needs a good wood frame around it, around the 3/4 inch plywood to prevent that from happening again.
Ooh, huh? That was like really stuck on there.
It's actually still tacky.
Well, it's a warm day today. Do we just let it keep kind of curing until this evening?
Yes. Yes, we will.
Okay.
With our rainy day, and knowing there are always a number of random odd jobs to be done now that we're getting further along, I took the opportunity to suit up in Tyvek and work on sanding down the fairing compound from the cabinets in our master head. Matt, having heard my cries for needing more spaces to fair out, thought it would be a good time to cut the door for what will be the small amount of storage we'll have under our master bed. Screwing in a form to get perfectly straight lines, he used a miniature circular saw to make the cuts through our 1-inch foam.
Well, it may not be a success, but it's still exciting unwrapping it.
So much dust on here.
Do I?
Yes. You're doing great a little earlier than expected.
This peel ply works so much better.
So get the total boat peel ply.
Yeah.
It looks like a comfy blanket. If you don't consider
right
all the
ahead,
fiberglass attached to it.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yep, okay, watch out for that.
Yep. So that was a problem. When it cracked underneath there, it lost the vacuum, or majority of the vacuum. And then another thing figured out too is when we did our test and we sucked resin into the vacuum, of course we sucked resin into the gauge as well. Didn't think about that at the time, so we were gaugeless, so I couldn't actually tell how much pressure we were getting. It seemed very under pressure, and it's quite obvious that it was. Well, that actually compressed down fairly well. So this used roughly a little over, just about a gallon of resin, 4 layers of double bias, then 4 layers of unidirectional.
Yeah.
Then we lost materials. All right.
Couple days.
Yeah, days. That's, hate to say it, but that's kind of the big thing right now.
Yeah, we're not really so time rich anymore.
No. So this will end up being cut and made into probably backing plates or something else for other areas. It won't go to complete waste.
What? Look at that. Half of what would have been our daggerboard case. So, what's the diagnosis?
There is some drier spots in here. Hey, it popped off the mold easy.
It did. I mean, the mold actually still looks
Fairly
good.
Don't look close.
Use the 10-foot rule.
That, I don't know if you can see how high that crack is, but let me give a perspective here. And that's that big crack in the board. And that's where all my vacuum escaped to. They don't want any pressure on the mold that isn't supposed to be there. Or isn't, that could collapse the mold at all. Because these sides, they're pretty strong. So I don't worry about it breaking. The problem is the interior of the mold doesn't really matter. It's not cosmetically, it doesn't have to be fair or anything like that. It's, but it has to be dimensionally correct. So it has to be the right width. The sides have to be parallel on it because it has to mate up the second side of it, the clamshell when it comes together. So I want to make sure that it's not bowing in and it's not also bowing in this part of the form as well, to hope that we're getting a complete square setup there. So that's the idea with this, is to make sure that the plastic, I don't know, but make sure the plastic isn't pulling in these sides when we pull into the vacuum. After learning how much pressure that vacuum actually did on this large of a mold, again, I've only done little small things before, and those were just a non-issue. This is a completely different scenario when we're talking about 9-foot long board by 2.5 feet wide. It's a big pull.
Today is the day for attempt 2. We finally got everything we needed from yesterday. I think you saw some video where we were doing prep with the bag and the table. Now I just went out to the hardware store and got extra hose and other things so we can have like multiple suction points and temperatures. Probably low to mid 50s right now. It's going to warm up to 60 today Fahrenheit, but that should be perfect work time for us and then curing time when it's done. So yeah, we're going to give it another shot.
So something is a little bit different here. It is, our mold now is covered with packing tape. That is going to be our release surface. If you remember, we were able to get a foil covered MDF. Well, apparently foil covered does not work well. Melamine was out of stock, couldn't get it anywhere. So we had to come up with a way to be able to pull the mold off, and the easiest way was just to cover this with packing tape and then wax that surface to make sure they have a good release with it. Not an issue again. This is inside of the daggerboard case. The only thing that matters is the dimensions. Other than that, the surface finish isn't the important part. So this will work great. Pull it off. We will probably have to re-tape it each time, or at least fix parts that where it failed or whatever, but it won't be shouldn't be an issue.
My hair is going crazy. There's like static cling coming from the boat. Whatever. I think we're gonna handle this like we did last time, where I've got my wetting station here, so I'm gonna take the big layers of fiberglass and just coat them in resin, and then Matt and I will both bring it over to the table. He'll kind of smooth it on there while I start wetting the next piece. And it's a little funny how geeked I get now about certain things, like pulling out a brand new clean mixing cup. But considering last time I went through 130 ounces of resin to get this done, I think I deserve it. Okay.
There we go.
Total boat, yes. Who needs you? Go away.
The very first layer to go on, which will be the inner portion of which our daggerboard will be exposed to, is our 12-ounce 45-45 double bias fiberglass. To get it to cover our form with the least amount of waste from our roll, which is 60 inches wide, we did this in 2 sections with a 1 to 2 inch overlap at the center. With these first 2 layers, we were making sure to use our vinyl ester resin, and I would give a thorough coating, making sure not to oversaturate. The reason for that will come in just a little bit. Once I had the entire surface coated, Matt and I would each grab an end and walk it over to our form, where we'd lay it down and he would roll it onto the surface. After our 2 layers of the double bias were 2 layers of our unidirectional fiberglass laid horizontally across our frame. Then was our unidirectional again, but this time laying vertically across the frame.
Can't remember which layer we're on right now, but this is the part where you guys are really starting to cramp. But I think we're more than halfway, which is good. So 3 layers left to go. Now we've got 2 layers of our double bias, and then 1 more layer of a vertical like we're doing now. And then we're good. We hope.
Yeah, don't spray anything left.
Nope. Time for me to clean these grubby hands and get ready to start putting down the tacky tape that's going to hold the vacuum bag in place and seal it shut. So Matt is putting on the peel ply right now just to make sure everything gets a smooth finish. It's going to kind of like suck up some of that extra resin. And then after that, we're getting our breather cloth on. Then we get to kind of pull the bag over, tape that down, and stick in the hose and put on the vacuum to start sucking all of it down. Daggerboard case 2, except now it's 1 because we messed up. Number 1.
Womp womp.
I should explain what I'm trying to do right now is to get as close to the edge of the bag as I can, because once we're done with this, there's really no peeling the tape off, it's too strong, but if we can just cut at the edge, we can reuse this bag. Maybe. But if we can reuse the bag, it's not because like we put the tape in too close, we can just keep going in a little bit each time. See how this all works. got one hose running here, and then another has been run along the outside of the table and is sucking in here. And this first part can take a few minutes to kind of find out because there's so much air in there, such a big space, that we have to like let it run for a second until we start to see any potential issues.
My heart's like pounding.
Yeah, I don't think we can afford to mess this up again.
I'm like, did I screw this up again?
Again. And we still have that resin catch right there. During our first practice run, like the little guy that we did, we accidentally sucked up resin, so now we have a catchment system so that it's going to go in there before it goes into the vacuum, not cost us any more vacuum pumps. Getting tighter. Oh my gosh. I can already start to see some of the resin soaking through, and
Oh, I feel so much better about this one.
got a good feeling.
If you remember before when I said I didn't oversaturate our fiberglass with resin, that is because with the pressure of the vacuum sucking the air out of the bag, it helps to distribute the resin that is in there by compacting the fiberglass to push the resin through, and uses the peel ply and breather cloth to soak up any of the excess.
The little seam through here is all pretty.
We're still getting pretty good suction right now. Both Matt and I have gone through checking for leaks. I found one in the seam of where two pieces of tape came together, so I was able to kind of like squish it down, get rid of that. And then there was a very small like puncture in the back, so we put foil tape over that, seal that up, and now Matt is getting a heater set up because we're just a few degrees under like what good curing temperatures are. So we don't want to have gone through all this trouble and end up with a non-cured resin. It has now been about 20 hours since we started the daggerboard case, or I should say, till it got to the point where all of the resin had been on. So we put two of our radiator heaters kind of like under the table, covered it with plastic bags and bubble wrap, let it sit for overnight just to give it a good chance to cure. And so now we're going to come back in the next morning and take everything apart and see, fingers crossed, if all of our effort was not for vain this time, if we have our first half mold of our daggerboard case. Right.
Fancy pants heating system.
Hey, you know what? Reduce, reuse, recycle. This stuff came with a container.
It did.
We're thrifty.
Yep. This is what protected the bows of the boat.
Yep. We're still sitting all the way up there. So this is the part where we cut the bag at the outer edges in hopes of reusing it, correct?
Yes. Hopefully we can get a second use out of this.
Reduce, reuse, recycle. Popping it off the mold while I've got easy access right now.
Then once this part started. Oh, that's the way it's supposed to look.
Oh man, that looks good. That's a keeper. What do you think?
Exactly like what you thought it would look, right?
Looks like fiberglass to me.
Uh-huh. Bam.
All right, Tucker, you can get back to work now. Thank you for your help.
Yeah, no
Thank you, sir. So, second time's the charm, apparently. We were able to keep the pressure the entire time, get the heat on it. So none of the dry spots that we got last time because we weren't able to pull the resin all the way through. Looks like exactly what I wanted. The next step is going to be trimming this down to the correct height and then making, of course, another one of these. We have a core, foam core that goes on the outside of this, and then we'll bond the two pieces together, two halves together, then glass multiple layers around that over the top of the coring and everything. So there's still a lot more steps to do for our daggerboard cases before we can even put them, mount them into place, and then glass them into place. But this is, now we've got a plan. We have good ideas to how we're going to do the other 3. Oh my gosh, we still have 3 more to do. We are leaving the peel ply and the coating on the outside until we're ready to bond that that core to the exterior of this. We're keeping it so to make sure it stays as a clean surface, and then we don't have to sand it or anything like that. We can just peel that off and immediately bond on that core. So it's going to look like this for the next couple of days until we can do that next step.
Japan.